The morning my lake vanished, the HOA laughed in my face. By the time their faucets ran dry, they were at my gate begging me for water. And the part that still makes my hands shake is how confident they were that I'd stay quiet. I've lived on this ranch long enough to know what my lake is supposed to sound like at sunrise. It has a rhythm, a soft lap against the dock legs, a little chorus of birds arguing in the reeds, bugs buzzing like background static. It's the kind of sound you stop noticing until it's gone. That morning I stepped onto my porch with a mug of black coffee, and the air felt wrong, lighter, hollow, like somebody had removed something in the night without asking permission. My dog Scout sensed it before I did. He trotted down the porch steps and stopped halfway across the yard, body stiff, ears forward, staring straight toward the shoreline. Not barking, not moving, just watching. "What is it, boy?" I murmured, even though I already felt the answer crawling up my spine. I followed him down the trail toward the water boots, crunching gravel coffee sloshing in my cup. And then I saw it. The water line had dropped fast. Not the normal inch or two you get after a warm day. I'm talking nearly a foot. Overnight. The stones that were usually half submerged now stuck out like exposed ribs. The dock, which should have been floating steady, leaned forward and creaked under its own weight like it was trying to reach for water that wasn't there anymore. Fresh, wet silt was sitting above the surface, and that's when my stomach dropped hard enough I swear I felt it in my knees. "No," I said out loud. No, that's not possible." I crouched and ran my fingers through the mud. It was cold, too cold for the kind of drop that fast. And the smell. It had that faint metallic undertone you get when soil's been disturbed. Scout sniffed once, then backed up with a sharp snort like he didn't want his nose anywhere near it. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the lake like it owed me an explanation. A single bubble rose near the center and popped quietly. Then nothing. No ripples, no movement. Just a flat sheet reflecting the pale sky like glass. My brain did what it always does when something doesn't add up. It started running scenarios. I used to be an engineer before I came back here full-time. Water doesn't just vanish. It moves. It leaves clues. It follows rules even when people don't. And this didn't follow any rule I knew. I went back up to the house, grabbed my old survey notebook, my dad's handwriting still on the first page, and came back down. I checked my shoreline markers carved into the pines, the same ones my father taught me to trust. The lake had lost about 11 inches since yesterday morning. 11 inches. Overnight. I stared at the number until it stopped looking like a number and started looking like a warning. By noon I'd rechecked it twice, pulled out old logs, compared it to the last 5 years. Dry spells, wet seasons, snowmelt. Nothing matched this. Nothing even came close. So I did what you do when you've got a problem, and the people next door love committees more than common sense. I went to the HOA meeting. Oak Ridge. HOA held their monthly meeting at the clubhouse like they were running a small government. Folding chairs, coffee urns, agenda sheets stacked like sacred texts. Ever since the new president took over, Bethany Crowell attendance had doubled. Not because people cared more, because Bethany's modernization plans had everyone either curious or terrified. Bethany was standing at the front arranging printed agendas with the precision of someone who worshipped control. Early 40s, blonde hair pulled back tight, tailored blazer, that expression that lives permanently halfway between a smirk and a threat. The kind of woman who never questions whether she deserves authority. She looked up when I walked in and said, "Mr. Carter." Not a greeting, a label. I didn't sit. I stood in the aisle until the room quieted. "It's about the lake," I said. You could feel the shift immediately. People liked the lake. It was the only natural thing left in this neighborhood that hadn't been turned into a rule. Bethany clasped her hands like a teacher indulging a child. "All right, let's hear it." I opened my notebook. The water line dropped nearly a foot overnight. No rainfall changes, no tributary blockage. Evaporation doesn't explain it. Something drained the lake. Bethany blinked slowly, then smiled. "Jake, lakes fluctuate. It's spring." "Not like this," I said, turning a page. "This kind of drop requires high-volume displacement in less than 12 hours. A few residents murmured. One older man frowned. Bethany's smile got tighter. So she said, leaning back, "What exactly are you implying? That the lake just ran away in the middle of the night?" I held her gaze. "I'm implying someone helped it along." There were soft gasps, the kind people make when they don't want to be the first one to say, "Oh, that's bad." Bethany lifted a finger like she was silencing a classroom. "This is precisely why we stick to facts, not paranoia. Jake, you're a rancher. I appreciate your enthusiasm for nature, but this lake has been here long before your measurements and will remain long after." I felt heat rise in my face. "I'm not being paranoid. I'm telling you it's being drained." Bethany laughed. Actually laughed. Draining the lake. Who would do that? Why? She turned to the board like I'd suggested aliens were siphoning trout. A couple board members chuckled with her. And right there, something in me hardened. Not anger yet. Something colder. Bethany shrugged. "You're welcome to submit a complaint in writing. The HOA will review it within the standard 60-day window." 60 days, I repeated. We may not have 6. And yet she said with a little smile, "That's the policy." The room felt smaller. People looked away. The way they always do when choosing a side might cost them peace. I closed my notebook. "I came here to warn you. When you realize I'm right, don't say I didn't try." Bethany's expression hardened. "Are you finished, Mr. Carter?" I walked out before I said something that would have given her exactly what she wanted, an excuse to label me disruptive and throw me out. In the parking lot, Scout lifted his head from the passenger seat like he could smell my frustration. "They won't listen," I muttered, gripping the steering wheel. "They won't listen until it hurts." I didn't know how true that would become. That afternoon, the lake dropped another couple inches. Not dramatic, but steady, like a slow bleed. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't watching nature. I was watching a machine. So I went looking. The southern shoreline is thick with cottonwoods and underbrush, the kind of place contractors love because it hides mistakes. Scout padded beside me, nose low, ears flicking at every sound. I scanned for tracks, hoses, trenches, anything that didn't belong. I almost missed it at first. A glint of metal half buried beneath roots exactly where no natural object should shine. I pushed weeds aside and froze. A steel drainage pipe, about 6 inches wide, angled down into a trench that funneled water away from the lake toward a dry ravine. Fresh weld seams, recently disturbed soil, the kind of sloppy cover-up you do when you're rushing and you think nobody's watching. My mouth went dry. "You've got to be kidding me." Scout sniffed the pipe and growled low, deep in his chest. And then I heard it, the hum. Water forced through a confined space. Active. Running. Right now. I pulled out my phone and started filming. Pipe angle welds the trench the direction it ran. Then I pulled out an old handheld flow meter I still kept in my pack because you never fully stop being the person you used to be. The reading stabilized around 40 gallons per minute. 40. Do the math on 40 gallons a minute over 12 hours. It wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a theft. My hands shook with anger, but I forced myself to stay methodical. Evidence. That's what matters. Not rage. Then I heard footsteps up the trail. Voices. Contractors. I ducked behind a cottonwood, pulled Scout close to keep him quiet, and listened. One man said, "We got the pump running again before Whitmore noticed." The other snorted. "Bethany wants the lake lower for her redesign. Says the shoreline looks messy." My stomach clenched so hard it hurt. So it wasn't just ignorance, it was intent. I waited until they passed, then filmed another 30 seconds steady, clear, undeniable, capturing the flow sound, the meter reading the pipe itself. When I got home, I spread everything across my kitchen table like a crime scene. Photos, measurements, a rough sketch of the pipe's orientation, timestamps. And for a second, a small, ugly voice tried to whisper its way back into my head. "Maybe you should drop it. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe it's not worth the war." I stared at my own hands, mud under the nails, knuckles tight, and realized how tired I already was. How fast a fight like this drains you. Not just time, not just money. It drains your spirit. That night I sat on the porch with Scout's head on my boot, staring at the dark line where water used to be, and I finally admitted it out loud. "I don't know if I can win this." Saying it felt like swallowing glass. And then, the next morning, the lake answered. It answered with dead fish. One trout lay on its side in the mud, gills stiff, scales dull. Then another. then a cluster of them floating near the surface, gulping for oxygen they couldn't reach. The water had turned cloudy brownish sick. The banks were collapsing. Reeds that should have been swaying in shallow water lay flattened and dry. Scout wouldn't go near the edge. He whined once and backed away like the place itself felt unsafe. I knelt in the mud staring at those fish and felt something crack inside me. Not anger, not even sadness. Helplessness. The kind that makes you want to sit down and let everything collapse because fighting feels like trying to stop a flood with your hands. I whispered I tried. I tried to warn them. And then the helplessness turned into something else. A decision. That day the HOA newsletter hit my inbox. Subject line Community Update Water Redistribution Project Phase 1. I opened it and my stomach turned. They weren't hiding anymore. They were bragging. They claimed it was mosquito control, aesthetic improvement, flood mitigation like we'd ever flooded. They wrote temporary trail closures and minor excavation like it was landscaping, not environmental destruction. And at the bottom there it was, Bethany Crowell, HOA President, Marcus Hale Modernization Committee Chair. Marcus. That name had been floating around for months. A developer type, smooth talker, always pitching improvements that just happened to open doors for construction. A lowered lake exposes land, shifts boundaries, creates new opportunities. I printed the newsletter and highlighted every confession they accidentally made in their own words. Then the fines arrived. One envelope, then another, then another. Unauthorized shoreline activity, disruptive behavior, failure to maintain visual harmony. One of the letters included a photo of my dock tilted because their pipe drained the water beneath it, used as evidence that I was the one ruining the shoreline. I laughed, but it was a hollow sound. You drained my lake, and you're fining me for it. That afternoon, they hand-delivered another notice I was suspended from attending HOA meetings pending conduct review. They were trying to cut me out and bury me under paperwork until I shut up. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt that temptation to fold. To stop, to protect my peace, to tell myself the lake wasn't worth the war. Then my phone buzzed. Sarah Whitfield, a lawyer I knew through a land dispute years ago. Sharp, unafraid. The kind of woman who looks at authority like it's just another obstacle. Her text was simple. Heard something happened at your lake. Call me. When she sat at my kitchen table an hour later, she didn't waste time. She looked through the photos, the measurements, the newsletter, the fines. Her brow tightened with every page. Jesus, Jake, she muttered. This is bad. Bad for who I asked. She tapped the newsletter. For them. This is basically a written admission. And the pipe, if we prove this was installed without permits, without environmental review, without the required HOA vote. They're done. I felt a bitter smile tug at my mouth. They laughed at me. Sarah's eyes flicked up. People laugh when they think they have control. Let's take it away. We spent that night building a case. Timelines, evidence packets, witness statements. I went door to door not begging, just asking for truth. Some neighbors avoided my eyes. Others surprised me. Tom from 2 houses down confessed he'd heard pumps at night. Denise said her pond was dropping too. That told me it wasn't just the lake. It was groundwater. The whole system was being messed with. The HOA sent 2 board members to my driveway the next day. They stepped out of a white SUV with Oak Ridge decals like they were federal agents. Treasurer Doug Garrison held a clipboard. Melanie Cross wore a stiff smile. Mr. Carter, Doug began, "We'd like to discuss your recent behavior." I didn't invite them inside. Make it quick. Melanie's smile tightened. "The lake is stable, Jake. You're the only one insisting otherwise." I held up my phone. Funny because my camera disagrees. Doug glanced at the evidence packet Sarah assembled, irritation flashing across his face. "If you keep stirring this up," Melanie said softly, "the board will have no choice but to escalate fines and restrictions." I stared at her. "So you're threatening me?" "It's policy enforcement," Doug said, like that made it noble. I kept my voice calm. "It's obstruction." For the first time, Melanie's smile faltered. They left without another word, but I could feel the shift. They weren't laughing anymore. They were nervous. Then the heat wave hit, a blistering sudden wave of dry heat that turned the valley brittle. Grass crisped, dirt cracked. The lake suffered hard, dropping faster under the strain of both nature and sabotage. By midday, I heard the HOA irrigation systems sputtering in the distance. Sprinklers stuttered, then died. Lawns that Bethany had obsessed over turned brown within hours. By 2 p.m., someone pounded on my gate. I stepped onto my porch. Scout bristled beside me. And there she was, Bethany Crowell, sweat streaking her makeup blouse clinging to her shoulders, hair frizzed by heat. Behind her stood Doug and another board member, faces tight with panic. Bethany tried to smile. It looked painful. "Jake," she said, "open the gate, please." I didn't move. "Say what you need from there." Her throat worked as she swallowed. "We need access to your private well system." I stared at her. "Excuse me?" Doug stepped forward, voice cracking. "The HOA wells are running dry. Some homes don't have water pressure. The city says it'll take days to reroute backup supply." "And that's my problem?" I asked flat. Bethany unrolled a blueprint against the fence wire. "Your well taps into a deeper aquifer vein. You still have water. We need temporary access to stabilize community pressure." I stared at the paper. My system diagram. Private. "How did you get that?" I asked, voice low. Bethany hesitated a fraction too long. "You accessed my records," I said. "They're required for planning," she lied weakly. "No, they're not," I corrected, and I could feel my anger sharpening again. "You drained the lake, Bethany. You mocked me when I warned you. You fined me for documenting your damage, and now you're at my gate asking for my water." Janice, one of the board members, wrung her hands behind Bethany. "We didn't know it would go this far," she whispered. "You didn't know," I repeated. "Because you didn't listen." Bethany's eyes glistened, and that's when I realized she wasn't just scared of the heat wave. She was scared of losing control. Scared the community was turning on her. Scared the consequences were finally here. "Please," she said. "Families are panicking. They're calling non-stop. People are blaming the board. If water fails completely, we could face lawsuits." "That sounds like a board problem," I said. Her jaw clenched. "Don't punish the community for something you think we did." "Think," I echoed, and I stepped back inside long enough to grab the manila folder sitting on my porch bench, the one full of photos and timestamps and flow readings. I held it up for her to see through the gate. "You did it," I said, "and you put it in writing." Bethany's voice dropped to a plea. "Jake, if you don't help us, everything falls apart." I leaned closer to the gate, voice calm, cold. "It already has." They stood there in the heat, stripped of power, stripped of certainty, stripped of water. And I didn't feel joy. I felt something darker, clarity. I said, "You want water? Show up tomorrow morning at the county hearing and tell the truth about the pipe." Bethany's eyes widened. "What hearing?" "The one you pretended didn't exist," I said. "Sarah scheduled it. And you're going." Doug's shoulders slumped. "We can't appear without counsel." "Then you should have thought about that before you played engineer with a lake," I said, and I locked the gate. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared of the hearing, because I knew they'd fight dirty until the very end. When we arrived at the county hall the next morning, the parking lot was overflowing. Pickup trucks, SUVs, even a news van idling near the curb. Neighbors lined up outside the doors, whispering, pointing. People who'd avoided eye contact for weeks suddenly wanted front row seats for accountability. Sarah stood at the steps binder under her arm like a weapon. "They showed," she said. Across the lot, Bethany and her board huddled near their car, faces tight. And beside them, Marcus Hale, looking annoyed, not worried, like accountability was an inconvenience. Inside the hearing room buzzed with tension. The Judge Melrose walked in with the kind of steady presence that shuts down nonsense without raising her voice. This hearing addresses allegations of unauthorized drainage infrastructure. She began resulting in environmental harm, water loss, and community impact. Evidence will be presented. Remarks will be factual. Sarah went first. Photos of the pipe, GPS coordinates, daily water readings, the HOA newsletter, the fines, the contractor recording referencing Phase 1 and Bethany's involvement, witness statements from neighbors whose ponds and wells were impacted, dead fish documented on cracked mud. Each item landed like a nail. Judge Melrose flipped through the photos, pausing at the fish. Her jaw tightened. Then she looked up at Bethany. "Do you have permits, impact assessments, or engineering reports for this project?" Bethany stood, voice wobbling. "Your Honor, we believed it was routine drainage maintenance." "Stop," Melrose said, and the room froze. Routine maintenance does not require an unpermitted diversion pipe draining a registered water body. Bethany glanced at Marcus like she wanted him to rescue her. Marcus stood smoothly, voice polished. I advised the board as a consultant. The intention was mosquito reduction and flood mitigation. Judge Melrose cut him off without even blinking. Are you a licensed hydrologist, Mr. Hale? No. Environmental engineer? No. Then why, she said, eyes sharp, were you directing drainage alterations to a protected water source? A murmur rolled through the room. Marcus's jaw twitched. Sheriff Morales, who'd warned them before, confirmed on record he'd told the HOA to stop unauthorized work. They ignored him. Judge Melrose closed the binder with a hard, final sound. This is negligence, she said, and you could feel the air shift like a storm changing direction. She looked at me. Mr. Carter, brief statement. I stood hands steady. My father left me that land. That lake-watered livestock hosted kids swimming, neighbors fishing. I warned the board. They mocked me. They retaliated. This isn't about pride. It's about stewardship. They treated our water like it was disposable. Judge Melrose nodded once. Then she turned back to the HOA board. Install an unauthorized drainage pipe. Ignore warnings. Conceal the work from homeowners. Misrepresent actions in official communications. Retaliate against a reporting homeowner. Her voice stayed calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. This is not a misunderstanding, she said. This is deliberate disregard. Bethany's face went pale. Doug looked like he might vomit. Marcus stared straight ahead like he could will the judge into backing down. But she didn't. The county will issue formal action, she said. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel struck once. Clean. Final. And that's when the collapse happened. Not fireworks. Not screaming. Just the moment Bethany's shoulders dropped like she'd been holding up a fake world with her spine, and it finally snapped. She sank into her chair, staring at the table, lips parted, eyes glassy like she couldn't compute a universe where her words didn't control people anymore. Marcus took one step toward Sarah, face tight with rage. "This isn't over," he hissed. Sarah's smile was ice. "It is for you." A state investigator approached Marcus with a folder labeled Notice of Inquiry. Marcus's smugness vanished so fast it was almost funny almost. Bethany didn't look at anyone. She just sat there, hollowed out, watching her authority turn into paperwork. I didn't celebrate. I didn't shake hands. I didn't smile for the crowd. I walked out into the heat and let the sun hit my face like a reminder that the world keeps moving even after you drag the truth into it. And as I drove home, all I could think was how close we came to losing the lake. Because a few people with clipboards thought they could rewrite reality. One short lesson stuck in my throat, sharp and simple. Protect what matters before you're forced to beg for it.